Hello, Nicolas. Nice to have you in this short podcast. I know that we tried for a while to have this conversation around Metaverse, a legal requirement, and so on, and I'm glad to have you. Just to introduce the concept to the audience. So I'm part of the VRAR Association in France, and the idea is to push more knowledge about the metaverse in different level from the technical side, but something very important also is to tackle the legal side, which is more related to privacy and the establishment of data around the metaverse. So thank you for being here with me, and
Thank you very much, Ali.
I'll give you the chance to introduce yourself and then jump on the questions. Thank you very much, Nicolas. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to speak with you today, and we did try for a while to have that conversation. I am an attorney at law at the Paris Bar. I'm the founding partner of a boutique law firm specialized in digital law and privacy issues. So that would be encompassing IP/IT, data law, and innovations law. Like the metaverse or the blockchain. And my practice is mainly focused on three sectors, which are entertainment, media, and sports and esports. I'm also a lecturer at INSEAD Business School in Law and Business Ethics. And what I like to think is my vision is to help companies navigate in today's challenging digital landscape, and to be sort of a bridge, a translator between Europe and other legal frameworks around the world that all relate to different conception of the law. That's it, basically.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Nicolas. So glad to have this opportunity to spread the word about legal implication for the metaverse. And let me ask you the first question, something very basic to begin with. A lot of persons around the VRAR industry are giving a definition about the metaverse. We know about some technicalities, the application with the blockchain technology, and so on. But give us an insight from your side. What is the metaverse from your perspective, knowing the background that you have in legal terms?
Well, what is really interesting in that regard is that even in law, metaverse is defined basically as a whole new era of consumer and social experiences, which means that there is no strict, rigid definition of the metaverse in law. What we can relate on is the definition of the European Parliament in a briefing note in June 2022. The European Parliament said that the metaverse can be described as, and I quote, an immersive and constant virtual three-dimension world where people interact by means of an avatar to carry out a wide range of activities. So having said that, there is no really legal implications. It still is a broad definition of three-dimensioned virtual universe, which of course you know all about. And I would also quote another definition that was brought up by lecturer from the University of Grenoble, who's called Amélie Favreau, who said, metaverse are virtual worlds which have their own specific functioning and are accessible to a large number of users simultaneously and in an immersive way, thanks in particular to representations by avatars. So you see that this definition is basically the same as the definition of the European Parliament. Today, even the law thinks the metaverse as a whole new range of social and consumer experiences. And within this whole new category of experiences, we're going to assess whether such regulation concerning, for instance, competition or data law or liabilities will concern certain aspects of it. But there is no strict legal definition of the metaverse today.
Okay, that's great to know. It's very interesting insight in terms of legal point of view. And talking about the European Union, I know that there is some changes in terms of regulation, and we know all of that Europe in general have really keen to protect the citizen and the resident in terms of privacy and data exchange. So can you tell us a little bit about this forecasted or already in place changes? You will tell us.
Of course. So what we see today is that Europe is characterized by very complex and constantly evolving legal framework. And basically Europe is regulating on a broad range of aspects. We've got, for instance, the Digital Markets Act concerning competition. We've got the Digital Services Act concerning how to regulate content on online platforms. We've got the Artificial Intelligence Act, which is still a proposal today. We've got this, of course, the GDPR, and all these regulations are applicable to the metaverse in diverse ways. So, for instance, I selected 4 elements to give you maybe a better grasp at it. So first, competition. Today, main issues relate to standardization and interoperability between platforms. So we've got the Digital Markets Act, which was adopted in July of this year by European lawmakers. So this act, this new regulation, establishes a set of criteria for qualifying a large online platform as a gatekeeper, a so-called gatekeeper, meaning that these gatekeepers will be required to let smaller actors of the industry use their own data, for instance. So they will be required to allow end users to unsubscribe from their platform services. They will be required to allow business users to promote their own offers and to conclude contracts with their own customers outside the gatekeeper's platform, and so forth. So today we see that this Digital Markets Act will likely apply to the metaverse in order to grant access for more competitors. I also selected 3 other themes: data protection and privacy issues. Of course, the GDPR will likely apply to the metaverse. And when you think about it, it's very huge, because the metaverse, as you know, collects large amounts of data, large amounts of personal data, including sensitive information, which means that when you've got headphones and when you are immersed within the metaverse, and when you interact with people and with brands, and we're going to see that afterwards, but when you interact with people, the metaverse will record your emotional response to a wide variety of events, and these emotional responses will likely be considered as sensitive information under the GDPR, which means more and more legal implications for metaverse industry actors. We also have a liability problem, meaning that within the metaverse you've got content, and this content can be illegal, it can be harmful, and the European standpoint today is the new Digital Services Act, which was adopted by EU lawmakers on October 4th. And this Digital Services Act will apply to numerous developers and businesses operating in the metaverse. This is what the European Parliament is telling us. At last, you've got financial transactions, how to make sure that commercial transactions in the metaverse are executed in the right way, in compliance with, for instance, the anti-money laundering directive. And in that regard, we've got a draft proposal for a regulation on markets and crypto assets, which dates back to September 2020. But we do not have a clear response as to, for instance, what are all the legal implications of non-fungible tokens, and how the use of NFTs within the metaverse will impact users and industry actors. So you see, you've got liabilities, financial transactions, data law, competition law. You've got, for every single problem, you've got a different regulation, and likely these regulations will not suffice for the complexity and the booming industry which is the metaverse today.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. It's very insightful and nourishing information, actually. And now a lot of individual, but also enterprises, government entity, startups are thinking about working more and more in the metaverse. So it does. They are asking themselves if they need to own assets in the metaverse, right? So if we change the perspective to someone who is interested to go on this, yes, what would be the advice? What would be the roadmap to advise him to take in place in order to secure his asset, the property, and so on and so forth?
Well, that's a very good question. I would say the first thing is to determine the objectives of that business. Is it to display the brand, for instance, so for advertising motives, like Dolce & Gabbana in Decentraland, or is it to introduce virtual goods and services which would have a commercial aspect, a commercial impact on the company, like, for instance, Nike in Roblox? So first, I would say that the main thing to do is to define the objective. Why would you like to invest the metaverse? Is it for branding display motives, or is it for introducing more goods and services in the virtual world? And second, I would say that from an operational perspective, it's very important that businesses know how to protect their intellectual property rights within the metaverse, taking into account that we're dealing here with intangible assets in a fully digitized world. So how can these companies protect themselves from counterfeiting, for instance? So we know from a legal perspective that the EU regulation on the European trademark of 2017 requires that whenever a business wants to apply for the protection of intellectual property rights for a trademark, this business is required to provide a representation of the mark. So that's not really an issue here, but also a list of the goods or services in respect of which the registration is requested, meaning that every business must apply for the protection of their trademark within the metaverse. When you buy Nike in the real world, you don't buy the same product than when you buy Nike in Roblox, because we're not talking about the same thing. And for that aspect, we've got the NIS classification. So the NIS classification of goods and services is basically a whole classification of goods and services to which are assigned numbers. So, for instance, if a brand, if a business applies for the protection of its trademark in the metaverse, they will be required to specify in their application that they are dealing with, that they are requesting the protection of their intellectual property right within the metaverse and not in the real world. So that would mean targeting different classes of goods and services. And for instance, we can quote Nike. Nike, when they applied for the protection of their IP rights, they applied for the protection of classes 9, 35, and 42. 9, recorded and downloadable media computer software. Of course, that would fit in the metaverse, but also 35 and 42, which refer to services involving business management, operation, organization, which is very broad actually, and 42, scientific and technological services and research and design relating thereto. So we are dealing with an uncertainty here as to which class of goods and services apply in order to have your own trademark protected within the metaverse, which is a great deal, because if a business aims at protecting its IP rights, but commits a mistake in, what class of goods and services you wish it to be protected under, well, that business will face competition or counterfeiting without being able to actually protect itself, because it will not have targeted the right class within its own application. So I would say that so that's for trademarks, and I would say that we've got two other implications. First, the metaverse is essentially a visual world. So beyond their trademarks, companies must protect their logos and other graphical elements in order to be able to act in response of any unauthorized use of their logo and graphical elements. My last remark would be that we are talking about digitized worlds, virtually accessible from anywhere in the world. So businesses will need to specify the territorial scope of their protection they apply for. So if you apply only for protection in France, for instance, or Saudi Arabia, you will likely be not protected in Japan or Australia. So of course, businesses investing in the metaverse will need to be very specific about the class of goods and services they apply for, and also the territorial scope of the protection they intend to benefit from.
Brilliant, Nicolas. Thank you very much. So I'm glad to have had this opportunity to talk with you regarding the metaverse, especially in this point of view that maybe it's not often discussed in social media or even in TV shows and so on. What is the implication of in the legal side with the metaverse for people who are interested on companies and so on? So this is a very, very insightful, and thank you very much for that. So I'm pretty sure a lot of people around will have a lot of questions around it. So hopefully I will revert back to you with the question. This video will be posted in LinkedIn, and we'll have hopefully a lot of feedback based on that. The VRAR Association in France is happy to have hosted this podcast. And I'm sure we can develop much more in the future with other topics with you, Nicolas. If you want to add anything, and thank you again.
Thank you very much, Dali.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a good day.
You too.